Hey everyone, welcome to this week's bonus episode. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. I'm going to be answering listeners' questions later on in this episode. If you don't hear me say something about some breaking news that has just happened, likely I'm including that portion in relation to answering a question from a listener. So if you want to hear this full episode, you know what to do. Subscribe to the show on Patreon at patreon.com/gaslit and join our community of listeners. Join the conversation, submit your questions, get all sorts of fun perks, because that's where we hang out now in post-Musk Twitter. That's a real community that we're helping each other through these hard times. A fun little surprise for our listeners. The wonderful genius that is Hamish Smith, a epic designer who's worked for NASA, the city of New York, for all sorts of extraordinary institutions. He happens to be a dear friend and a lot of fun. And I saw him at his Halloween party, and we very drunkenly came up with this design scheme. And so there's a new Hamish Smith design. He, of course, did our logo, which is extraordinary, and will go down in history of logo design, and made a big splash in the whole design world when it first launched. He did a t-shirt for us called "'Tis the Season to Prosecute Treason," and it is a shirt that will never go out of style. You can wear it year round because it's always "'Tis the season to prosecute treason." And so you can get your shirt. Look for the link in the show notes. And thank you so much, Hamish, for making this. It is fantastic. And I want to say that there are 4 Gaslit Nation listeners who joined us at our massive sister district phone bank for Virginia. I surprised everyone at that phone bank by letting them know that this shirt was coming. And I selected 4 volunteers at this phone bank to get the shirt. They know who they are. I reached out to them already. So I want to let you ladies know, because it happened to be mostly ladies, if I recall correctly. I did not intend for that. There's just a lot of women at this phone bank because we are fighting for our lives right now. And so you're going to get your shirts. It's coming. Thank you, everyone. We are going to start a very odd, very long year with Jack Smith's trial in January. He is staffing up for that in a very big way. I don't expect much to come out of that. The reason being, we're going to have, for instance, a big sort of explainer piece on this featuring ProPublica's Jesse Eisinger, an investigative journalist who led the corruption fight in all of their bombshell Supreme Court investigations, revealing how Clarence Thomas was on the payroll of Nazi memorabilia enthusiast and far-right megadonor Harlan Crow. Jesse also wrote a book called The Chicken Shit Club, Why the DOJ Let Wall Street Get Away with Crashing Our Economy, Why No One Went to Jail. So Jesse's going to be on the show in December, walking us through how our legal system works for the very rich, to give us context on why Trump is still walking around free. We already know very well why he's walking around free, for all the reasons we've already documented on the show. There's a whole list of reasons, obviously, that go beyond the usual sort of cast of characters that are all mobbed up with each other. But with the very rich, they have the war chest to take as many shots as they can against prosecutors. And eventually some of those shots land. And on top of that, they have the means to make massive donations to elected officials up and down the ballot, including judges, including district attorneys. And on top of that, they can fund organizations that push their interests. They can fund lobbyists. They can buy up media outlets. They can create a massive network of influence peddling that not only keeps them out of prison, but also makes them legitimized in the mainstream and buys off the people they need bought, cable news hosts and so on. So there's a whole entrenched corruption racket. As I've always been saying on the show, corruption is an industry. And as my film, Mr. Jones, which is at heart a story about corruption, it opens with pigs feeding at the trough for a reason, because corruption is an industry, and that industry includes blood money. I don't expect much with all the trials that Trump's going to be hit with at the start of the year. I do expect that more of his network is going to get financially squeezed and destroyed, like Rudy Giuliani. You have the election monitors who are rightfully suing him for threatening their lives, putting a giant target on their heads. So I think the trend is going to continue that people around Trump are going to have their finances destroyed, their lives destroyed, and so on. And that's fun to watch. But as for Trump, I don't expect prison. I do know that the facts point to prison, that he should go to prison, but I do not expect it. But I do also expect that possibly at the start of the year, as all these court cases are rolling out in a big way, and it's just Trump and court cases, and that's all, that Nikki Haley is going to eke her way through in the GOP primaries. And I think that is going to be very, very dangerous for all of us, because the Republicans who have turned against Trump and the independents and these must-win battleground states are going to rally around her. They're desperate to have an alternative, hit the reset button, finally bury the cult of Trump, even though that's not possible. The hood's off, the train's left the station. That the Klan is out and holding public office, large and small, and including expanding their numbers in Congress. But you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of independents and Republicans desperate to cling to any sense of normalcy. And I think I think that and the nonstop coverage of Trump's court cases will make a feasible path for Nikki Haley. And that path is also the comeback for the Kushners, who are very close to her. And they're all mobbed up with Netanyahu and his family. And that means we're just going to get Trump in heels, right? And that's not a great alternative to Biden. And we're going to go into all of that later in this episode, since listeners have questions around those issues. For now, I want to flag two stories. One is, as you know by now, George Santos is on the brink of being expelled from Congress. The New York State Republicans that are desperate to protect their own air of legitimacy, hold on to their fragile seats in 2024. They've been leading the effort to push him out. Their colleagues on the Republican side resisted without some sort of definitive court case, or some ethics probe. And so finally, they now have that ethics probe. The House ethics investigation found that Santos spent campaign money lavishly on himself, including his honeymoon in Las Vegas, spending thousands on spa treatments, Botox, and on a Hermes shopping spree. I mean, he was like living large like Putin. When you talk about why these Republicans are so mobbed up with the Russians, it's because they want to live large like Putin's court of oligarchs. And you may recall from earlier episodes that Santos was taking money from a financier who was the cousin and worked closely with a Russian oligarch, Vekselberg, who was instrumental to spreading Putin's corruption abroad. Vekselberg was tasked with the Kremlin and with establishing a Russian Silicon Valley. And so then he spread Russian-linked money around to MIT and other leading universities and Silicon Valley companies, to the point where the FBI blew the whistle on this and got really alarmed. And since then, he's, of course, been sanctioned. But his cousin gave a massive amount of money, for us anyway, a massive amount for us by our standards, to George Santos, who then lost it in a Florida-based Ponzi scheme that's been investigated by the SEC. And after that disaster, this same financier decided to give tens of thousands to George Santos in his House election in New York. And then Santos went on to just rake that money in hand over fist and become his own one-man Ponzi scheme. And so I really think that if you lose money to someone in a Ponzi scheme, how dare you then help this person run for office, given their judgment? So there must be some other agenda there, especially if you have notorious links to a notorious Russian oligarch close to Putin and instrumental to spreading Putin's corruption abroad. So I think Santos was a Pyrrhic victory for his Russian-linked backers. I think they probably thought, oh, we got one in. We got another one in to the House. And it's just been skidding off the rails ever since. So after the House comes back, after Thanksgiving, there's supposed to be a motion to expel him. And this time it'll likely go through. And he's out. He already announced he's not running for re-election anyway, but it'll be fun to watch him go. It's been a nightmare, a national nightmare. And just remind everybody, we've been through these dark times before. And the interwar period in the 1930s, where our Republican-controlled isolationist Congress was just as much of a fascist-aligned corrupt mess as it is today, with violent tendencies. All right, another story I want to flag for you, which is being reported in the Hollywood press as some wonderful thing when it's actually quite terrifying. Len Blavatnik, who is the owner of Warner Music. Warner Music is developing an Edith Piaf AI-generated biopic. So you might have read how AI was central to the actors' strike. AI technology is coming up fast and furious. There's already examples of how extras and crowd shots are being replaced with AI, which looks phony as hell. It's like eating processed cheese, watching stuff like this. And this is the wave of the future because the idea is it's going to just save so much money. Having worked on a film on days where you have crowd shots, yes, that's a massive amount of extras that need to get dressed, have their makeup done, their hair done, is exhausting for everyone. It's a punishing day on set. But at the same time, you're taking away jobs that people need. And these actors are professional actors. They pay their mortgage. They save for their retirement through these acting jobs. And to replace them with AI is obviously extremely troubling, a Pandora's box. Are you then going to introduce a basic wage so they have something to, we still live in capitalism? Are you going to dismantle capitalism? No, you're not. Then why are you pushing AI when there's no safety net for the rest of us, when AI is going to just pull the rug out from under us? So Len Blavatnik's Warner Music Group is developing this AI-generated biopic with Edith Piaf, which is going to lead to the advancement of AI that's going to further this technology. And of course, a guy like Len Blavatnik would be behind it. He is somebody who has many reported links to Putin's court of oligarchs. He came up in that world. And he's somebody that has thrown around massive amount of money to both leading parties, especially Democrats. He's put his name on all sorts of institutions in terms of, a reputation laundering, peddling his influence. He's a mega donor to the Council on Foreign Relations, whose president, Richard Haass, has been appalling on Morning Joe, saying things that I wish I had the clip for. I've dug around for this clip and I conveniently cannot find it. But Richard Haass has been on Morning Joe saying that Ukraine just needs to give up. He's said things that go beyond land for peace. He's said things that have gone beyond just like Ukraine needs to give up territory just to end this war. It's more just like Ukraine just needs to give up. It's losing. The counteroffensive is a failure. And on top of that, there's going to be no prosecution of war crimes. He has said that flat out. And no, rolling his eyes and no, we're not going to prosecute Russian war crimes. It's like he got in all the hits to please his big old backers, like somebody like a Len Blavatnik. It's like music to a guy like Len Blavatnik's ears. So I'm not surprised that Blavatnik's massive, hugely influential, culturally influential global corporation is pushing the rapid development of AI, which is creepy here, because guess who this would benefit? The Russian state. Russia is notorious for using the same crisis actors, recycling the same Russian actors to play civilians in the war, to act like Ukrainian civilians who are being terrorized by Ukraine's own military. There's been all sorts of online sleuths who have dug up pictures of the same actors being reused again and again in these propaganda videos pushed by Russian state media. And so if you have AI advanced to the point where they can create these slick videos producing whatever reality they want to push on you to hack your brain, that would be a wonderful asset to have. We can't even get social media right. We are not ready for this. Like, this is coming. I know the train's left the station, but we're not ready for this. Elon Musk, for instance, who has destroyed Twitter, he is just going full Nazi stormtrooper there now and promoting these blatantly anti-Semitic threads and just being beyond appalling. And that's why I'm really trying to help our community wean ourselves off Twitter, as hard as it is. And we're going to have a workshop soon to talk about all the social media alternatives out there and how to sort of familiarize ourselves with them and get going in other places and sort of get our act together going into 2024. But my larger point is, be alarmed. This is really disturbing, and it's creepy. An Edith Piaf AI-generated biopic, no thank you. Fun fact, I spoke at a university panel once, and a man in the audience kept attacking me with Kremlin talking points, and it turned out he was Len Blavatnik's cousin. So Terrell Starr was on the panel with me, and he reminded me about that story the other day. All right. So now I'm going to answer some questions from our subscribers at the Democracy Defender level or higher. If you want to submit a question, hear this full episode where I go more into some of the breaking news that's happened since our last episode came out, you can also support our independent journalism by subscribing at patreon.com/gaslit. That's patreon.com/gaslit. Thank you to everyone who supports the show.